Yesterday, November 6, 2025 was the biggest day for Tesla in 2025 with the annual shareholder meeting happening, and no too big of a surprise that happened, but it was very exciting to see the comp package approved, everyone super excited, and Elon ready to take us into the future. In this video, we are going to review what actually happens, review the stock reaction, and of course, discuss a little bit my predictions versus the outcomes, and then go into what this all means for the stock going forward from now. So yesterday, the meeting happened, and the most important takeaway is, of course, that Elon's compensation package, as I predicted with 99.98% probability to pass, actually passed. So I said 99.98%. I lowered my prediction from 99.99% to 99.98% after the Norwegian Sovereign Wealth Fund said they're voting against it. So it didn't really change too much. In other words, I was completely certain. And my reasoning was very simple. This compensation package from 2018 was retroactively approved again, a second time by the shareholders with 73% last year in September. And that gave me some confidence that we basically stress tested that compensation package. So I said it's absolutely going to go through, because now Elon is also allowed to vote on it, which adds 15% votes to the whole thing. And I predicted it will pass with 83% of the votes, but it only got 75%. So that was surprising to me. I was pretty firm on the 83%. I arrived at that by adding Elon's votes and then detracting some votes, because I was pretty sure that institutions will vote a little less positive on this package. But then it got a little more less, so I was off 8%. That's an important lesson here. So the impact of Glass Lewis, of what Elon calls the corporate terrorists, of Glass Lewis and ISS, these ESG people who have a huge grasp on corporate governance or undermine corporate governance worldwide, but especially in the United States, was bigger than expected, which is a warning signal to everyone. So they basically had these recommendations to vote against this package, to the clear detriment of shareholders, and a surprisingly high number of institutions seem to have listened to Glass Lewis and ISS, which is a warning to all of us that corporate governance is a mess right now, and that there are very bad people who can influence these votes. So all of us should be aware of this and make sure that Glass Lewis and ISS get kicked out of the equation as quickly as possible. But the bottom line is pretty safe win for Elon, and that is bullish for the stock. Next important thing is the investment in X. There was a shareholder proposal that Tesla is allowed to invest in X.AI or explore an investment in X.AI, which was important to shareholders approve it, because otherwise it's a conflict of interest for Elon, because he is on both sides. So that's very good. I'm bullish on an investment in X.AI. I think AGI and any company that works on AGI, especially X.AI, will be a central part of the future and very important for Tesla. It's a question of valuation. What is a fair valuation? How much shares should Tesla actually buy? But getting an upside in X.AI is for sure a good thing strategically. Hey, creating these videos is a lot of work. Please like and subscribe. It really helps out the channel. Now let's get back to the video. And then, of course, the interesting part, and we'll go into this very quickly and then discuss the shares, was an update from Elon in a presentation that I want to go through. So what were the news in that very exciting shareholder meeting? And here's a quick summary. We'll go through the key things. Let's start with FSD and what we learned about next year and the future. So basically, Tesla described robotaxi and FSD and said, by solely FSD use, not autopilot across the last year, they could show 85% fewer crashes, 5,000 fewer fatalities, which is crazy, 2 million fewer injuries. And Elon is very bullish on version 14.3 that is coming out very soon. For robotaxi, that means Tesla is aiming to expand robotaxi to Las Vegas, Phoenix, Dallas, Houston, and Miami in short order. And they want to remove the safety drivers in Austin. We knew that already. He was talking then about AI hardware, which is a key thing, the production of chips. Of course, the news here was that Elon seems intent on actually launching a fab, like the actual chip manufacturing under Tesla's vertically integrated regiment. And that would be pretty impressive and becomes a direct alternative to NVIDIA, to Samsung, and maybe even TSMC, at least internally for Tesla, right? So very important, he talked about the chip. I don't want to go into the details, but for you guys and us, what is the important takeaway? Tesla is evolving into a full-scale AI company, not just on hardware, not just on application layer, not just on robots and on autonomous cars, but also in the core manufacturing of chips vertical. So it seems pretty safe to say that Tesla will become a full-fledged semiconductor production company, but only for internal use of these semiconductors, which shows you how important that will be for the future. And Elon also said the limiting factors of the future will be energy and compute chips. That's the limiting factors. I think he's strategically right. I think tactically, regulations will be an issue for robotaxi for a quick scale in the next 2-3 years. And some AI components on the software side for Optimus. On the Optimus side, very important, I will jump right to the thing. Elon basically said some very important things, that Tesla will roll out and implement and launch and use a 1 million unit production line at Fremont. And I reported this on this channel earlier this year, early last month, about a leak from China that we know that Tesla is preparing not just the line of 1 million robot capacity, 1 million humanoid robots a year. That is more than people expected. But that we also know that these suppliers are getting prepared with CapEx and with contracts to deliver 70,000 Optimus, whatever the plural is, 70,000 humanoid robots next year in terms of supply. So this is going to happen. And that's on the low end. It could be as high as 200,000, the contracts that are being signed. So I leaked that. That was a Chinese leak from suppliers. Very interesting. If that is true, by the way, people completely mispriced the stock on the Optimus side because that would be enormous. And then he said, of course, the next step would be a 10 million unit production line at Giga Texas. You need to understand what that means. These things have far higher margins because they are robot as a service solutions. Far higher margins than cars. Let that sink in. Do you know what happens if Tesla would add 10 million additional car sales a year? Can you even imagine? And that is more than that because 10 million robots are more valuable than 10 million cars in terms of margin for Tesla. And he was talking about 4 million units per year by the end of 2027. That's not going to happen. I'm projecting 1 million by 2030, but that is enough to catapult the stock above 7,000 by 2030. So we don't need 4 million by 2027. That's completely delusional, Elon. But we are on the right track here. Then on the vehicle side, Elon was talking actually about increasing the output. Where is this? By 50% next year. I think that's a little ambitious, but I'm happy if it happens. He's thinking about 3 million cars sold next year. I think that's not going to happen. If we are ending up with 2.5 million, we can be very happy, and that would be an enormous boost to the stock. Right? We need to translate these numbers also into stock price. We don't need, if we get to 2,000 stock price next year, I'm happy. At 1,000, I'm also happy, but I think we will get to 2,000. I will cover this in a separate video on Monday, by the way. You have to tune in on Monday because I'm revamping the whole valuation model and tell you not just valuation and fair future value of the stock, but also what my actual stock price is for 2026 for next year, because I have some surprises for you. Because I think right now the stock is massively undervalued compared to its fair future value. And I think what's happening next year is that I will sit here and tell you it's overvalued. Because I think next year we are running into a situation where you will have exuberance on Tesla. Because we will get to 40,000 cyber caps, in my opinion. And that will create exuberance in the stock price and drive it very high, above the red line, above the fair value. And that's an interesting situation. So tune in on Monday because I'm going to outline the whole quantitative analytics for this. Tesla Energy, growing like crazy. Semi, very important. The big truck, Tesla semi truck coming also next year at scale after a long wait time. That is an enormous business that is underrated, especially once they introduce autonomy to trucking, which might happen in 2027. Enormous business. Totally not priced in accurately into the stock. The Roadster, well, I will cover the Roadster on a very, me leaning out of the window video on Sunday about flying cars. But the Roadster will fly. The reveal, I think he said, will be April 1st next year, and then production starting 12 to 18 months after. I have my own opinion on the whole thing. You will see what I think. I think that is completely out of left field. No one even knows what's happening here. I think we're dealing with flying cars. I think even Elon doesn't take it too seriously, but I take it very seriously. So that's a different video over the weekend. Okay, so that's roughly what's going on here. He also mentioned he wants to make SpaceX stock available for investors. I think, in other words, that means an IPO for SpaceX might be coming. That would be very big news. I would love that so much. Elon, please do it. Make it pop. It's more than time to do that. So that is roughly what happened here. That is the rough summary. Let's look at the stock and the stock market and analyze what's happening. So the stock right now is, let me refresh that. That is not correct. Right. It is at 433.69. And what that actually means, if we go to, let's take a look at the market to put that a little bit into perspective. And of course, Google always changes its interface, which is a little obnoxious. Where are the markets here? Classic. Let's go to Classic. Here are the markets. And we see the NASDAQ is down 1%, right? NASDAQ is down 1%. So let's analyze what that means for Tesla stock right now. So Tesla has a beta of 2. So when NASDAQ moves and Tesla does nothing, then Tesla moves basically at 2x. Tesla should be down if it would do nothing, 2%, but it's down 2.74%. So it's roughly 0.5% down. You understand what I'm doing here, right? NASDAQ falls 1%, Tesla automatically falls 2% because it has a beta of 2. So the differential is 0.5%. So the reaction to the shareholder meeting was basically nothing. It was flatlining. What did I predict? I predicted it's going to be a nothing burger. It's not going to be sell the news, but it's also not going to rally. If we are coming in between 445 and 450 into the event, I explained it by my channel being right now 410 to 460 to 70. That is the channel Tesla is in. I explained that basically everything is priced into this event. If we come in right in the middle of the channel, it will be a sideways move. Looks like I was completely right. The stock is not doing anything. It's basically a complete sideways move of less than 1% deviation from the market. So does that mean I'm not bullish or not bearish? What am I? Well, it is very clear now that Tesla is confirming everything I was predicting. So that is incredibly bullish, but there is no surprise. That's why the share is not moving up. And what it means is, for my model and for my predictions, I stick to everything I said, but it's getting more solid, right? I'm taking more and more risk out because it's more and more clear that this is exactly what I said, but I'm getting more confident with all these predictions beyond the level of confidence I had before, because Elon confirms, yes, scale, CyberCap is coming. April, it will actually start scaling, which means Q3 in my opinion. So if he says April, probably not going to happen Q2, going to get a little delayed, being very ready in Q3, maybe a little earlier than I predicted. I predicted end of Q3, maybe it's going to be beginning of Q3. But scaling CyberCap is not even the issue. The issue is producing CyberCap and being able to deploy it. And that is the gating function. They need to get regulatory approval, which is easy for the 7 plus states in the United States where there is very little regulation. Texas, Florida, Georgia, even Illinois, Arizona. So there are a bunch of states where it's easy. So regulation is also not the gating function. I think the gating function will be Tesla being ready to do that with complete safety, because we are not there yet, right? So FSD needs to be a little better, but we are totally on track. I think by the second half of next year, FSD will be near perfect. Then Tesla has to have the operations and the remote operators completely locked down for scale, which they totally don't have right now, but that's very doable. So my prediction is, yes, Q3 is the point in time where the scales. I'm sticking to my May prediction of next year, where we hit 1,800 to 2,000 effective full-time equivalent robotaxis, and the forcing function kicks in. I'm sticking to May. I said May a long time ago. I'm sticking to May, even though some people now get uber bullish and say, no, Joe, it's going to be earlier. No, I think 1,800 to 2,000 full-time robotaxi equivalents That means it could be 4,000 deployed robotaxis that only drive 100 commercial miles a day. Mine mean 200 miles a day. That's still going to happen in May, is my prediction. And then we can hit real scale with cybercabs in Q3 and Q4. If we get to 40,000 robotaxis and cybercabs deployed next year, it's going to be an absolute rain of gold on Tesla shareholders, right? You don't need like what Elon says with hundreds of thousands. You can completely forget that. This is completely not going to happen. But if we get to 40,000, which is ambitious, it's going to be golden. Very, very golden. Okay, back to today, this week, and the stock. What did I do based on my predictions? Well, when it went all the way up, I think on Tuesday, when was that? I sold some calls. I admit it. I sold 490 calls for some good premium. Not too many. I didn't want to take too many risks. When the stock dropped to 450 before the shareholder meetings, I decided to keep the 490 because I deemed it very unlikely that this thing goes to 490 today. I also aggressively sold some puts at 435 that are expiring today, both expiring today, 490 and 435. I knew I'm taking risks with the 435, but here's why I did it. First of all, I think it might even turn out nicely today. But even if this thing goes back to 425 or whatever, I'm willing to take the risk. At 425, I'm not even losing money, I think. I'm losing money at 426, something on my short 435 puts. But I was willing to do that because even if this thing doesn't recover today too much, this is mostly a function of the market. So we have to understand the macro situation. The market has the most phony sell-off in a long time. So this is total gold for the experienced investor and trader. The market clearly is mega bullish on AI. Everything is going through the roof. They're taking a breather now with the cheapest of excuses and saying, we think the market is overvalued. Let's sell it off a little bit. They attempted it once. Now they're attempting it again this week. Maybe they attempted a third time. I think the worst thing that can happen is the NASDAQ goes down 5% in total. I think it's right now down probably 2-3% from the top. And they just can't make it happen. It's very sad to see, which means this is a totally golden buy the dip situation, in my opinion. We are setting up for an epic rally into the year end. That is my prediction, at least. This phony little sell-off today is golden because it shows you how indecisive the market is with a sell-off. They're just waiting to have a reason to drive this to 7,500, the S&P. That's at least what I think, and a lot of other people think. Here you see the S&P. Fundstrat says we are going to end up at 7,500. I think that's extremely possible. And you see how this behaved here. We went down the last 5 days, but on the 1 month, we are actually down 0.58% over a month. It's very funny. Over 6 months, we are up nearly 20% on the entire S&P. Go to the NASDAQ. The last 6 months, we are up an insane 28% on the entire technology market of the United States. On a 1 month level, we are flat. On a 5-day level, we are down nearly 5%. I think once we hit the 5%, everyone's happy. Maybe it's going to get 10% if it gets bad next week. No one cares. This thing is going to go up like crazy. I'm not always saying this, by the way. Sometimes it's scary with the tariffs. I wasn't sure how deep this falls. I said it's going to be a V-shaped recovery. But in this instance here, this is just so phony. People really try to sell off with no reason and it doesn't even really work and everyone knows the rally is coming. No way. That's why I was selling the 435 puts on Tesla expiring today, because I thought even if this happens, even if I don't cash in completely, which right now I would, by the way, and I think I will, but even if I wouldn't cash in completely, that's just setting me up for next week to win, right? I roll it over into next week. Easy peasy. So that's kind of the situation. Sorry for the tactical trading talk. Of course, I'm sitting on a giant fat Tesla core position. That's what I believe in. But the tactical trading is just too easy right now. So let's take some additional alpha with us. That's it for this video. Just want to give my quick opinion on the entire situation. Everything as expected. No surprises. Stock is flat, moving with the market. I think the market is setting up for an epic, beautiful rally. Maybe there's some more volatility next week, but at some point we are getting over it and setting up for the year-end rally. That would be very good for Tesla, potentially hitting 500 or more this year, in my opinion. And then tune in on Monday. Well, tune in every day. But on Monday, I'm covering my outlook for 2026, updated based on all these information now, including a stock price prediction that I normally don't make because I'm only talking about fair value and the real value of a stock. But I'm going out on a limb and will talk about what I think happens next year. And I think that will be very exciting. So stay put. Thanks for watching and see you very soon.